How do you think a belt can help you in battle? I don't see this as being very helpful.
It holds up your spiritual pants.
Yes. Nathan, let's get into that.
Hey everybody, I'm Nate Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock.
And this is Family Friday. This is a show that we do every Friday that comes out on Thursday. It gets getting
It makes
confusing.
a lot of sense.
But this is a show where we focus on what the Bible says about parenting, about family, and talk about practically how do we implement that in our families so that our families can be used by the Lord to His glory.
Right now, we're in a series about the armor of God and how we can teach that to our kids, how we can set our kids up for success with spiritual battles, because it's going to happen.
Right.
For any believer, spiritual battle is going to happen. So,
Right.
we had an intro week, maybe not last week, but the week before.
Believe that's right.
An intro week, the episode before this, that was talking about, so the armor of God is found in Ephesians 6, 10 through 18. And there's a little bit of a lead up in like 10, 11, 12, I don't know the exact verses. I'll read it here in a minute. Where it talks about spiritual battles and what that means, and that we need to stand firm.
And the whole purpose of this series is to talk about how do we teach these to our children at a young age. Right. So that they can take up the armor of God and implement that into their lives at a young age.
But as adults, we need to understand all this too.
No doubt.
So I'm going to read really quick the Ephesians 6, 10 through 18, and then we'll get into it. So it starts off, "Finally be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day. And having done all to stand firm, stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints, and also for me, that words, sorry, I'm going to stop at 18. So, making supplication for all the saints."
I love that verse makes it so clear that we have a real enemy. Right? It doesn't matter if we want to acknowledge that we have an enemy, don't want to acknowledge that we have an enemy. We have one. And just like in the army, you're not going to be a very effective soldier if you just stand, in the trench or stand on the battle line and go, "There's no enemy out there. There's no enemy out there. There's no enemy out there." It doesn't matter if you deny the enemy or not. The enemy exists.
Right.
And Paul was so clear that we have a true enemy. The enemy exists, and we need to be prepared to fight it.
Right.
Because ready or not, here they come.
Yeah. I love that part where it says in verse 12, "We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic forces or cosmic powers over this present darkness, against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places."
Right.
And as I was reading that, I thought, I think especially for our kids to understand what spiritual battle is, God created our world to be perfect. Original creation was perfection. There was no sin. There was an opportunity for sin because the serpent was in the Garden of Eden. So there was opportunity for sin because there was an opportunity for free will. But there was no sin in the beginning. And when Adam and Eve chose to go against what God said, to not eat of the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil,
Right.
then that was sin, and sin entered the world. So anything that's not perfect is the work of the enemy.
These principalities of darkness.
Anything that we experience that's imperfection. So a fight that we have with somebody, or being judgmental, or any like, they can be so small, but anything that's not perfect is work of the enemy. So I think explaining to our kids that when we experience imperfection in our thought life, or in the way I treat my parents or my siblings, or it doesn't have to be some huge battle, but a lot of times it's the small little things that can really drag us down, because we're not really watching out for those as much as we're watching out for the big battles.
That's right, and not everything is the same, right? We have temptations that come from within because our flesh is flawed due to original sin. We have temptations that come from without, that come from the world around us, and then we have direct evil temptations that come into our life, either in our thought life or in the world around us. So there's attacks that come from all sides, and it's easy to fall to those temptations if we're not prepared with the armor of God. And that was the message Paul was trying to get across to the church in Ephesus. As we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Ephesus was a military installation. So the church in Ephesus would have been very familiar with soldiers walking around, and you got to imagine there were young kids in the church in Ephesus that thought it was really cool that they had these cool swords and this shiny armor. And so Paul's trying to paint a picture to them of, it's not just the Roman centurion that is armored up. It's us as believers that need to be armored up, and here's what our armor looks like.
Right.
And that starts with what?
With the belt of truth.
The belt of truth.
So God did not leave us to fight alone. We are backed up by His army, but we also have an army of believers that we get to do battle with too. So
right.
He didn't leave us alone, and He didn't leave us without armor. We're not just, standing out in the battlefield with nothing to protect us. We have armor, and that first thing starts with the belt of truth.
Yeah. But sadly, there are a lot of Christians that are standing out on the battlefield without armor.
Sure, because it's a choice.
That's right.
To take
just
up your
like
armor.
any armor, you have to choose to put it on.
And just like you have to choose to stand firm.
That's right. And so a big piece of this is just understanding what this armor is. And I'm so glad that you're going to explain it for us on each of these pieces, because I don't know how we prepare our kids to take it up if our kids go, I don't even know what that means.
Right. Okay, so the first thing is the belt of truth. The way that this armor is laid out in Ephesians 6 is how you would put it on. So the first item that's listed is the first thing that you would put on. And then the second thing, the breastplate of righteousness, would be the second thing that you put on.
The underwear of girding is the first thing.
The underwear of girding, sure, yes. So it wasn't, belts were not like the belts that we have today.
I don't know what you mean.
The belts that a warrior would wear are not like this belt that I have here that keeps pants up.
Although, I am a warrior, though.
Yes,
so,
of course, babe.
A janitorial sales warrior.
Yes.
With my belt.
Very much so.
Okay, so what were they?
So
then?
the belts were made of like leather and metal, but they weren't actually part of the armor that you would... It wasn't considered part of the armor, but it was a necessary piece. So when you put it on, it was what you used to... people back then wore kind of like
flowy
toga,
robes. We've all been to toga parties here.
Toga type things, robes. They weren't wearing pants at the time. So in order to fight, that would be really hard to fight in a dress, a long dress that keeps you confined. So they had to pull that up, and they had to have a way to pull that up and keep it up so that they had mobility.
Right.
So they used a belt to do that, and that belt was important for the armor to fit well too. So it pulled up the toga, but it also situated things so that their armor fit well.
Right, so you may read in the Bible from time to time about girding, right? That's that process by pulling up those robes and sort of fastening them so that you can have better mobility.
Right.
And for Jewish men in particular, that was not something that you did, right? I mean, that was not a honorable thing to be showing your lower legs and ankles, so it was not something that was looked favorably upon. But obviously, as a Roman soldier, hard, like you said, it's hard to fight if you're wearing a toga.
Right. So why was the belt, the first piece, called the belt of truth by Paul? Well, truth must be what our lives as Christians are built on. If we don't have truth, or we don't believe truth, then who are we? Well, we're probably not believers. So where do we get truth from? Well, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So we get that from the Word. We get that from the life of Jesus.
Right.
We have to stand on truth that's the same yesterday, today, and forever. That truth doesn't change. And that's what we have to stand on. That's what we have to put on first so that everything falls into place after that.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And a lot of these other pieces, right? The breastplate of righteousness. How do you even know what righteousness is if you don't first have truth?
Right.
Right. The sword of the Spirit.
You can't.
That doesn't make any sense to you if you don't understand truth. I mean, if you're not clear on what truth is, then none of these other pieces of armor matter. In fact, armor doesn't matter because if you don't know truth, it's impossible for you to know who the enemy is.
Yeah, and as I was preparing for this, I was thinking, in what way did Satan try to attack Jesus in the wilderness? By feeding him lies.
Right.
Lies about twisting scripture, which is the truth.
Yep.
Lies about all sorts of things. And so if we are not standing on truth, we'll fall in battle.
Right.
So
yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's a huge area that the enemy is gonna deal with us on.
That's right.
Lies and second guessing what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
All that sort of thing.
Yep.
So
it's great.
We'll easily fall in battle if we lack truth or if we believe lies.
It's good.
Okay. So then how do we teach our kids all that?
You tell them and then you ground them if they don't listen to you.
Yeah. All right. That's the end of the episode. Thanks for listening. Okay. One way is to talk about truth in your home and where truth comes from. So we need to be talking about the truth is the Bible, and that regardless of how things change in our world and what our society thinks or what a past society thought or whatever, truth is the same. Right. It's always going to be the same. What we read in the Word is relevant. It is truth for today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is something where we have to help our kids think through the modern narrative of there really is no truth and can everybody just kind of thinks their own stuff. And we need to help our kids at a young age understand that can't possibly be true. Right? There has to be objective truth. Yep. Because the problem is, if you ask your kid, well, what's something that's true for you? And they say, well, I think it's true that I like ice cream. And you go, well, I think that's a lie. And they go, well, no, I'm telling you that's the truth. And you go, well, you can't tell me my truth. And my truth says that's a lie. Right? Truth can't be self-defeating. Right? Truth is true. It's true for everyone. It's true in all circumstances. That's truth. We might not always understand truth, but that doesn't make it not true.
Sure.
And so, first thing we've got to do is be able to get to a page with our young children to help them understand there is truth. Truth is something that can be discovered here on earth. And this is really an important part of those younger age school kids. We don't talk about this anymore if your kids are in the public school system, but originally the purpose of the young grades, right, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in that neighborhood, was helping our kids understand that truth is true. Now, they didn't even they did do it biblically, but they didn't just do it biblically, right? When I tell you what's 2 plus 2, and you say 5, I say wrong. That teaches our kids there is objective truth. If I take 2 and another 2 and I combine them, it's 4. It's not 5. It's not 6. It's not 3. It's 4. Right. Always, every time, doesn't matter 2 of what, in what situation, on the moon, on the earth, under the earth, it doesn't matter. That's true. We're training our kids at those young ages. Truth is truth. And we should be about uncovering that truth. That's why we learn math. That's why we learn to read. That's why we do all these things, so that we can figure out, well, what is the truth about this world that we live in? And that truth is reflective of our Creator.
Right.
So first thing we got to do, as you said, is establish that there's truth.
Right. And as parents, we need to be faithful to know what truth is too. So be faithful to get into our word and into the Bible ourselves and really know what that is, so that we can be teaching that to our kids. Little kids, that those young years, like Nathan was just talking about, are great years to just plant. They're sponges. Their brains are sponges to just plant truth in them.
Right.
And then as they get older, they can start learning why that's true and then defending that truth.
Right.
As they get older.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's
so,
exactly right.
So if you've got older kids, later junior high or later middle school, high school, those are great years to start having some really tough discussions.
Yeah.
Asking them, what are some things that you think, you're questionable on as far as this, maybe the Bible or this God thing or whatever, and let's talk that out. Let's research that and really dig into that. Let's start learning how to defend our faith.
Right.
And learning the depths of why this is true and how can I defend that.
Yeah, totally.
So
that's great.
That's a way. For our kids, oftentimes Jackson's the only one that wears a belt, but oftentimes
very occasionally.
Well,
which is awkward because it's part of his school uniform.
He wears it a lot of times for that. I see that belt when he's wearing his uniform and pray for him to know truth, to believe truth, understand truth, and to gird himself with truth, to put on that belt of truth himself,
right.
In battle. So
it's great.
When they have a belt, just using that as a way to think about, I'm going to pray for my kid, and also pray with them about that too. Maybe as they're putting on their belt or you see them, whatever. It's just a good kind of object lesson, I guess. Just time and time again to sow into that. And then another funny thing, like for young kids, have them wear kind of like a toga thing, get a bed sheet and put it around them so they can understand, okay, how would you feel fighting in this the way it is? How would you feel fighting this? You don't feel ready for battle. You would have such a hard time battling in this. That's why we need to
cinch it up,
get the belt of truth, and that's the importance in battle for that belt.
Yep.
And have just a little object lesson.
That's great. That's great. I hope our young kids think of that.
And older kids too. What I think learn a lot from that if they're willing to do it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing for our kids if we feel like perhaps they're getting squishy with the truth. Mm-hmm. We can ask them. Are you wearing your belt? Mm-hmm. Right? Are you wearing the belt of truth right now?
Right.
Because it seems like maybe you're going down a road of exaggeration or fibbing or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
We want to be about the truth.
Right. That's all we've got for you.
Awesome.
These episodes will be really short because they're just on one piece of armor.
Yep. Quick hits.
But
love it.
It's stuff to think about.
That's right. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope there was something you took away that you can incorporate into the way you parent your kids, even after this one episode on the Belt of Truth. Can't wait to get back at you with more a week from today. Until then, check us out on Sunday night for our Sunday Night Live, and then you can be looking forward to Marriage Monday.
Yeah.
Until then, guys, thanks so much for joining us. And remember, God is for your family.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.